Hi, this is Ali from Quality Spectrum and welcome to another episode. And today we are going to talk about the subject of what to automate. Now, there was a previous episode in under this subject in which I discussed what to test before we decide on what to automate. So once we have those tests decided, which should be part of our test plan, then we can talk about out of those tests which should be focused for automation. So in my opinion, there are four main areas or four main characteristics which we should look for when deciding on which tests we should make a part of automation and invest in automation, and which tests are best done in exploratory or context driven testing. So the first item is frequency of test. And by that I mean, how frequent do we feel that this feature should be tested? So does it have to be tested every release, every patch, or we can do it every few releases, or we can do it even once a year if there are no changes to that feature? So it all depends. Every feature would not be the same. So for instance, Skype sign in, you would want to test that feature in every release, to our Skype example from the previous video. And on the other hand, probably deleting a chat message might not be as important. So if we test that feature every other release, that would also be fine. So you need to identify how frequently you want this test to be checked. So the second point is the importance of the test. So every test is important, at least from if you did do the exercise from our previous episode where we decided what tests are important. So naturally we are picking from those, so everything is important, but still some of them would be more important and some of them might not be as much. Probably this might also overlap to some extent with the previous point where we talked about frequency of test, but there are cases where the frequency might be lower or it could be lower, but the importance is, but it's not any less important. So for instance, let's say mic connectivity in our Skype example might be important, but it might be rated on the test frequency. You can have a lower frequency probably for that. Again, the sign in would be something which is as important, but it has to be tested as frequently as well. So the amount of we need to rank the tests by importance. You can have any scale that would make it easier to identify which tests are more important and which tests have to be tested with more frequency. So the third point would be ease of automation. This is generally the most commonly used point when we talk about what to automate, but it also is a very complex and a very subjective question, because ease of automation varies a lot across how automation frameworks are designed, what type of product we are automating, and what the environment is. So ease of automation is a very subjective question from team to team. So this video here might not give a comprehensive answer to this, but I try to address some very basic and important points. So the first under this would be ease of automation. So the first would be UI controls which are easier to automate from the UI. Naturally, for the most part, automation teams start from the UI level, and so any controls which are not automation friendly, let's say, automation tools have a problem recognizing them, interacting with them, identifying them, they might not be a great candidate. I have to mention here that UI automation is not the only automations level at which you can automate. So you would all want to consider API automation and backend DB level automation as well. So if a test can be automated easily from the API level, but it's hard on the UI level, so you might want to add that consideration when you rank those tests as well. The second point I'd make is response predictability. Now, by that I mean, so if I perform steps A, B, C, where the application state is X, so I am supposed to get a response Y. So sometimes certain features of applications could be where you cannot predict with precision every time what the output is going to be. For a human being looking at that problem, it might not be as much of a challenge, but for a dumb machine who is trying to just follow instructions, that would be a big problem. So any test where there is unpredictability in the response, those might not be great candidates for automation. So the last point would be automation superpowers. By that I mean areas or tests which are difficult for a human being to test, but machines can do that easily. For instance, repetitive tasks machines can do very well. So if you ask a person sitting on an assembly line to just keep fitting in screws or driving screws in the whole day just the same way, it would be difficult for a human being to do that, but for a robot it's going to be really easy. So the same case, anything that is repetitive and it's done the same way again, steps again and again, those are automation, what I call them superpowers. So that's where you can really leverage automation, and you can use the same test, it can run it again and again. And the next would be reusability. So by reusability I mean if you have a certain general set of instructions and you can just change the data and have a different test which is important for your application, those would also be a very good candidate for automation, and that would come under the heading of what I call automation superpowers, because you can have multiple tests created easily just by manipulating the data, and that would yield a lot of test coverage and can be done easily. However, I do have to mention here that all of this depends a lot on how your framework has been set up. So if your framework is not designed to have reusability built inside it, then you might not be able to leverage most of these points here, but generally that's how you should design your framework. So the third point would be lots of detail. So for instance, if you have a form which you need to fill like 80 or 100 fields and verify the values in there, automation would be very good at that, but a human being would get bored and they can skip things, so they might not be as good at it. And then the next one would be precision. Certain tests where we are, for instance, doing mathematical calculations, or we are testing exact strings or exact values or anything that needs precise measurement, automation can be very good at it. For instance, if in cases for performance testing, for instance, if you are looking at the request and response timing of our application, any automated scripts would be awesome for that. Lastly, I added this long duration tests. For instance, some features where you have to run certain tests or certain steps for a longer period, or you're getting a response after a longer time, that would also come under this, because a tool would be far better doing that job than a human being. So these are a few points where I think automation, you can decide based on what you should automate from the superset we talked about in our previous episode about what to test. So this again might not be a conclusive list of what all the characteristics you should look for, but these are definitely some of those that I usually encourage teams to look out for. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, add them in the comments below. If you find this video useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to join us in redefining software quality. See you next time.